This week on Forward.
All of our work is sort of, the theory of change is experiential. So the documentary is about experiencing people getting basic income. The platform is about experiencing how it actually works.
Very, very hard to teach financial planning to someone who has no money. It's similar with UBI. It's like, well, here's how it works. And as soon as someone actually experiences it, to your point, Conrad, then it's a very different.
They immediately confuse it with
animal.
welfare, and or it'll be an excuse for the government to control you and tell you what to do. And it's like, no, now you're talking about conditional welfare. Like, that's not UBI.
It is my pleasure to welcome to the podcast some old friends, the UBI Jedi himself, Scott Santens, and the UBI guy, the co-creator of the Bootstraps documentary and Comingle, Conrad Shaw. Welcome, Conrad and Scott Santens.
Thank
Conrad
you.
Shaw, Scott Santens, my guys for all things UBI. So it's a pleasure to be with you both. There's some exciting updates, but first, give people a little bit of your personal backstories in terms of how you came to believe so strongly in UBI. And I feel like everyone knows you, Scott. So Conrad,
All right, I'll
us
take it
off.
It was 2016, and I was in New York I had left engineering to pursue acting, screenwriting, stuff like that. So I was waiting tables and stuff. And I had met my now wife, Dea, who's a documentarian, and she had asked me if I wanted to produce whatever her next documentary was going to be, and I was like, hell yes. And I had sort of been just taken by this article about UBI that sort of assaulted all my notions of there must just not be enough in society, or we would do something smart and at scale. And there was an article that's like, yeah, we could just do it. And so
just to give people the numbers, he did. That's not one of yours, Scott. So by the numbers, the U.S. economy right now is approximately, let's call it $78,000 a person, which I'm going to suggest is probably enough to alleviate poverty at scale. And it might be the first time in American history where it actually is totally feasible.
That was the napkin math I kind of did at first. Was like, I didn't do by GDP. I did average per capita income per person, including, and then spread it amongst like anyone who's not working too. So man, woman, child, retiree, like the average in that year was like 55K, and the average wealth was like 250,000. And so to me, if the average household of four has $1 million in the bank and is bringing in close to $250,000 a year, like that, like by the numbers, that shows me how far the average was from the median. And also like 55K is like, if we're talking 12,000 a year for a basic income, we could pay for that several times over and still have lots of inequality.
Yeah, I think the current percentage, like GDP per capita for a poverty level ending basic income right now is 18% GDP per capita. So yeah, it's totally doable. And if we did that too, like inequality would basically go to, Nordic nation levels. It's not like, we'd be anywhere close to, crazy amounts of full equality or something. It's actually realistic amounts of the Gini index.
Yeah, so Scott, you're kind of a walking emblem for UBI, one of my inspirations in the space. We met before I declared my presidential run, and I have to say, of the people I told I was running for president, you were amongst the most positive from the get-go. So thank you for that. But you had already crowdsourced yourself a UBI at that point.
Yeah, so I got into basic income back in 2013, and it was in 2015, that year was when I went about crowdfunding my basic income through Patreon. And then I achieved my goal in January 2016 of that was my goal, was $1,000 per month. So ever since then, I've
By the way, everyone
Patreon
listening to this kicking themselves being like, man, I could have been the crowdsourced UBI guy if I just beaten Scott to it by 12 months. But I have to say, Scott, you do an excellent job compiling all data points, studies, trials. When I want to know what's going on in UBI world, I do reach out to you, honestly. People reach out to me all the time, and I'm like, it's talking to Scott.
Thanks.
So I mentioned Comingle and the Bootstraps documentary, which would probably be brand new to most people listening to this. So I just want to set the stage a little bit. I run for president. We go to Iowa. We fight it out. We have awesome times. And what I tell people is like we got about 24% of what we would have needed in Iowa. We got 9,400 votes or so, and we needed about 40,000 to get to number one. So thank you, Scott, for being in Iowa and everyone else who was there. If you weren't there, where were you? Anyway, so we come off the trail. COVID hits. The government has these massive response programs. People who are really plugged in know that we kicked up something called Humanity Forward and the Humanity Forward Foundation that raised about $10 million to lobby for cash relief, and we're still doing that. But then simultaneously, you decided jointly to take matters into your own hands. You also now started the Income for All Foundation, of which you're the founder and president?
Income to Support All Foundation.
Oh, yeah. There it is. Income to Support All. Thank you. Does that have a cool... Oh, that's what it is. It's like the ITSA. I just need to remember the acronym. Income to Support All Foundation.
Yeah.
It's a foundation.
Like, what is UBI? It's a foundation.
Yeah.
Oh, clever.
Yeah. It's just one of those things that I find myself just saying over and over again. Like, it's a floor, it's a foundation, it's a foundation.
It's a foundation. Double meaning, huh?
Yeah.
Huh? The most cleverly named foundation. So there's the ITSA Foundation, and then there's Comingle, which got kicked off. I want to say now it must have been over a year ago. Is that right?
It's actually been in development for years.
Comingle's been in development since 2020. Actually, my co-founder, Josh, who kind of conceived the idea originally as a way for gig workers and freelancers to pool their money to like smooth out their incomes, reached out to me when he'd seen some of my stuff to ask for,
Conrad Shaw's that UBI guy.
Yeah. Right.
Reached out to you.
He saw I did this thing called the UBI calculator too, that sort of like analyzed the different proposals, analyzed yours on there too. And he's like, "Oh, I think I'm doing something like UBI." So he reached out to me, and I said, "Actually, you're pretty close, and I would encourage you to take it further, like make it like a full-blown sort of governmental UBI model, like a money pooling with its own tax or tithe mechanism. And also, can I join the team?" Because I was now done with most of my work for the Bootstraps project, and I was looking for stuff. So yeah, we've been working on that since 2020 together. Still in development, but we're looking to release it maybe late this year, early next year.
So what is Comingle for the uninformed?
Comingle's it's like a mass mutual aid web platform that it's built like a UBI, built like a governmental UBI.
So what it is community members essentially say, hey, we're going to pool income, and then if I have a tough period, I'm getting out more than I'm putting in. If I'm flush, then I'm maybe putting in a little bit more than I'm getting out. Is that?
Yeah, and it responds to your weekly income. So it's like you sign up your bank accounts, and it sort of automatically tracks your income week over week, and on weeks where you have an income that's lower than the average of all the members, you get a little more help. On weeks when you have a higher income, you give a little more help. And the way you do it is kind of like it's like a UBI funded by a flat tax, where essentially everyone is pledging 7% of their income into the pot every week. That all gets divvied up and sent back out in equal share. So it sort of proportionally targets the extra help to the people who have the lowest income in any given week, so that you kind of create a floor. So if we're expecting the payout to be like $50 a week to help people out. Someone with no income will get $50 a week, and that's the new UBI floor essentially that the group is giving each other. And then the higher up the income spectrum you go, the more of it gets kind of clawed back by your pledge until you're a net giver. Wow.
So what I like about it is essentially crowdsourced UBI for people who step forward and say, you know what, I want to, I'm not going to wait for the government to figure this out.
Yeah. And the way that it works too with the 7% phase out mechanism is that, I think it helps people understand UBI better. Like I'm sure you've heard it so many times during your campaign that people were like, why would we give $1,000 per month to Bill Gates? And, even though you're talking about the 10% VAT as like part of it, they weren't like combining those things together and thinking, well, Bill Gates is going to spend more in the 10% VAT than he would be receiving this. So like, yes, please, Bill Gates, sign up to Comingle,
That's kind of an experiential, all of our work is sort of, the theory of change is experiential. So the documentary is about experiencing people getting basic income. The platform is about experiencing how it actually works. And the metaphor I like to use is a board game. The first time you play a new board game with friends, you sit around and look at the instructions for like an hour, and your eyes are crossing, and it's not like they could write it any better, but it's just not the best way to communicate how it works. And then like an hour in, someone just snatches up the dice and it's like, okay, whatever, and rolls them. Oh, I guess I move this here. And like 2 turns in, everyone gets how the game works. And that's how I imagine it'll work. Like, we can't intellectually wrap our heads around these sorts of mechanisms.
Yeah, one of the things I used to say on the trail is that it's very, very hard to teach financial planning to someone who has no money. And so it's similar with UBI. It's like, well, here's how it works. And as soon as someone actually experiences it, to your point, Conrad, then it's a very different.
They immediately confuse it with welfare, and or it'll be an excuse for the government to control you and tell you what to do. And it's like, no, now you're talking about conditional welfare. Like, that's not UBI, but you have to.
I think you should mention there's a direct story even from the Bootstraps pilot. As part of the Bootstraps Doc Series.
Yeah, we'll talk about Bootstraps in a second.
But just right into that.
The Comingle crew. So how many people have signed up? Is it open for signups now?
It's not. We're still beta testing. We're still developing. So we're hoping to launch first. So we have like phases of beta to make sure it's safe with people's money and stuff. We want to do local pilots and initiatives, hopefully sometime near the end of the year, and work out all the kinks and open it up nationally, just to be first come, first serve.
So, but if someone likes the idea of Comingle, is there a way they can get involved?
Yeah. We still do have a Indiegogo campaign that's running for Comingle that it's succeeded, but it's open. And the main perk is you get early on the wait list to join when it opens. Because there'll have to be a wait list as we grow it organically. So we don't have the luxury of like the federal government of being like, oh, no, everyone has to pay taxes. So we have to make sure we have a good income spread.
I think I gave to that campaign. What was the goal and what's it at now?
The goal was 75,000. It's like 83,000 or
nice.
something.
Success. And beautiful.
You came in early like a rock star and helped us out.
Thank you guys. I'm pumped that you guys hit the goal. And if someone wants to, they can still go to Indiegogo and find the Comingle campaign. Hey YouTube, thanks for watching. Please do hit like and subscribe and hit that bell if you want to be notified every time a new episode drops. Probably on Mondays, but hit that bell, and thank you. You mentioned this Bootstraps documentary. Now, this is wild, where you guys raised a significant amount of money and gave it to a bunch of different people and then painstakingly tracked their stories for 2 years?
2.5.
2.5 years? And so people who don't know much about documentary films, incidentally, I hear this as someone who, by the way, has starred in a documentary called Generation Startup. You guys can probably download it somewhere. But I hear that and I think, okay, you're going to give, and I believe you gave $1,000 a month to participants?
$1,000 per adult and $333 per kid.
And how many participants were there?
We had, it kind of changed with the household size, because if if a baby was born or something, we bumped it up.
Nice.
But we had 20, give or take. That was 11 households across like 10 different states, from like no income, experiencing homelessness, to solidly middle class.
So it sounds like minimum you gave away X hundreds of thousands. So what's that?
Yeah,
400 or 500?
We raised like between $500,000 and $600,000.
Yeah. So let's call it $500,000 for argument. But then the documentary itself, following subjects around for that period of time, immediately my mind says that's over $1 million.
That's much more expensive.
Yeah, that's
couple million to get where we are, and we still have like another million to get through the rest of post-production.
It's a great example of the how much more expensive the administration of a program is.
Well, just like making a decent film is freaking not easy. Like you watch films and maybe you start taking for granted, but again, as someone who was a part of a documentary, I was like, holy cow. So I immediately thought, so this is a very, very significant project where you got $500,000 just to give to folks. And then there was a ton of identification of the subjects. And I have seen footage from the series, and the narratives are really compelling. You found like a rural Trump type guy, a family with a sick child, which was super heart-wrenching, like a young person who seemed kind of I think there was a Native American, so there you had a whole slew of stories, which is, by the way, also not easy. Like it's difficult to find people who are willing to open up their lives and then sit with you and spend time. Like all that stuff's a lot of work.
Yeah, sort of the ambition of what we were doing was ill-advised. Like a lot of people will.
Well, I can't relate to that at all.
No, it's a very different kind of documentary.
A lot of people,
extremely difficult.
There's a type of documentary where you interview a bunch of experts, and so you have to just kind of fund getting to the interview and like setting it up and doing like 10 interviews. And that was like our research phase, which we did on like balance transfers out of our credit cards.
Which you also,
that's when we interviewed you in our apartment.
Oh man, I was a subject.
That's
nice.
when he found out you're running for president.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, good times.
I don't know if I was as optimistic as Scott, but I was happy about it.
Well, you hit it well, Conrad.
Being embedded all over the country, I mean, it meant we had to hire like highly professional videographers and people all over the country to film intermittently over the course of several years. That is a big operation.
Yeah, it's a big operation because these people were spread out around the country.
And we're like, Dea has some cred, and she's an amazing filmmaker, and I totally leaned on.
That's Dea Schlossberg.
Dea Schlossberg.
Emmy winner?
Emmy winner.
She's won a few, actually, a couple student Emmys for her thesis.
Sure.
But The Story of Plastic, if people want to watch that. So we weren't messing around in terms of the ambition or like the quality level.
And I will say also, my experience with independent film is that you pretty much have to build it and make it happen in real time. Like, it's very, very rare that someone's like, here's everything you need, you go to do the thing. Instead, it's like, okay, I cobble this together, I do this piece, I look around, I say, we need this for this, we need this for this. So the fact that you got $500,000 to give to real life people, and then another sounds like $2 million to follow and track. And I've seen the footage. The footage is stirring. It's well done. It's professional. Dave's very talented. Whoever you guys had doing this was very, very talented. And so you started following these stories from when to when?
It was from, we staggered them in because it was a long and painful process to raise the money.
Sure.
But it was 2017 it was originally going to be 2 years. So to like mid 2019. And then we made a case to one of our funders that it's like, back at that time, we thought we were going to release in early 2020, and then the world collapsed. But we didn't want to be releasing a documentary about people while dropping them off their basic incomes. It didn't feel right. So we made the case for 5 more months. And we started it in early 2020, and it ended up being like the first 5 months of the pandemic that actually they were getting a basic income. So we had those 2.5-ish years where this cohort of people was getting their basic incomes. And then we did a couple check-ins after it ended, like we did a 2-year look back. So all in all, we actually filmed them from between 2016 and like 2022.
That's incredible.
I just want to point out too that, again, one of the really special things about the way the pilot was designed for this is that, again, every single person in the household got it.
Yeah.
And like, so many pilots we're seeing, there's over 150 pilots around the country on these city-based pilots, but they're all basically one member of the household or just looking at the household and with one payment, and it doesn't change. And so I think that's like a really important aspect. And and the other part of it too is just with the timing of COVID and the end of the Bootstraps pilot. Like, it's amazing how like part of the narrative, like the way that it turned out was that each person, they're all like facing their own individual kind of challenges around the country. And then like they all face the same challenge together, kind of at like the end of the series. Like, it's really interesting that It just worked out that way.
It's like one of those series where all the narratives combine.
Right.
Yes, they
They
all
didn't
meet
write it
each
that
other.
way.
It turns out that they
Yeah.
were all cousins. I'm kidding.
Last episode. Yeah. I'm very excited for these people to meet each other someday, like when we're having a premiere or something. But actually did do a lot of different things with the design of our pilot than a lot of people did, from being longer and per person and a higher amount of money. And we actually did it weekly. We broke it up weekly to be more like a paycheck. So that you were one of like 40, and you too, or like 40 different experts we shelled out like our balance transfers to drive around the country and interview a bunch of people. And eventually we told them all, sorry, you're not going to be in the series. We were just learning about UBI. And we did a bunch of little clips and things for social media. But it's really the real experts of a basic income are the people experiencing it.
Again, the footage I've seen has been awesome and speaks to that, where you actually see like the awakenings and stories where someone's like, oh, because everyone believes it's too good to be true until it actually hits their account and is in their hands, and they're like, really, I can do whatever I want.
And so many people are going to see themselves in each of these like storylines, like especially, and I'm just looking at the news, right now with the latest hurricane, and like, this is the earliest Cat 5 hurricane in the Atlantic. And then there's a story with someone, the rural Trump supporter. He really experiences like evacuation due to hurricane, dealing with FEMA. And I think that storyline just says a lot about the importance of basic income for like climate adaptation.
The folks who get hurt the most in these natural disasters are the poor. And then a lot of them are hunkering down because they don't have a car, place to go, any kind of financial cushion.
Well, Dea, so for a long time, like, as watching UBI come up, watching it get positioned like, no, it's jobs guarantee versus UBI. No, we have to do climate first. No, we have to do health.
Oh, by the way,
care
it's still a
first.
pet peeve of mine. You guys remember during one of the debates where I said we just move people to higher ground, and then all the climate activists yelled at me being like, defeatist, like, no, we're going to like solve it. I'm like, oh, really? Like, good luck with that. I mean, I'm all for it, by the way. I mean, I'm all for combating climate change or whatever, but in the interim, maybe we should let people actually go to higher ground because
you have to
the
enable
hurricane's
people
going
to
to
do
come.
that.
And it's not just resilience. Like, so Dea came from climate films, and she did deep dive research on anything from like just climate breakdown as a whole to like the entire life cycle of plastic, from pulling it out of the ground and manufacturing to like in the ecosystem. And one thing that became abundantly clear is that these extractive industries are entirely standing upon the existence of extreme poverty. Like when we ship all of our trash to like a poorer country and, blame it on them for not having the management systems to handle our trash. It's these narratives that can happen because of the fact that these countries will still accept our trash because they have people who are poor enough to be willing to lose a couple of decades off their life stooping and digging through giant piles of trash to find like the one or two things that have a little bit of a marketable value as a recyclable plastic. Like if you don't have absolute impoverished situations, you don't have people you can use for that labor. You don't have markets you can force, like single-use sachets and the kinds of stuff you don't see in wealthier countries that are very wasteful. You don't have people who like you can move in a factory down the street from them and pollute their air because they have a little bit of more power to fight back. Like all of these industries depend on people to be disempowered to exist in the first place. So if we want to fight climate change, the most important thing we can do is get everyone empowered enough to engage in their own ways, whether it's buying conscientiously, protesting, activism. These are like volunteer activities that require some source of income to make sure people can do it.
This podcast is sponsored by Helix Sleep. I've been a mattress guy since my 20s because I always figured if you're going to do something for almost a third of your life, you should try and do it right, that anything you invest in a mattress, you'll get back many times over in terms of health, energy, and productivity. But Helix Sleep wasn't around way back then. I really wish it were. Imagine getting a personalized mattress shipped straight to your door, free of charge. Just take the Helix Sleep quiz. I was matched with a Dawn mattress because I wanted something that felt firm, and I sleep on my back. Now, how do you sleep? Go to the Helix Sleep Quiz. Tell them, and then you can get a mattress sent to your door for a 100-night free trial, I know, with a 10 or 15-year warranty. Don't take my word for it. Helix has been awarded the #1 mattress pick by GQ and Wired Magazine. Helix is offering up to 30% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners. Go to helixsleep.com/yang. That's helixsleep.com/yang. This is their best offer yet, and it won't last long. With Helix, better sleep starts now. Yeah, I obviously believe that alleviating poverty is totally achievable and is something of a no-brainer. Like we would get the value back many, many times over. I've now shifted gears in terms of how we get there, and I know Scott's super into ranked choice voting and primary reform and everything else, where it's like, where, and I've said this before, it's like approval of universal basic income went from 28% at the beginning of my campaign to about 65% at the end. And I had the naivete to think, well, the only problem here is that not enough Americans know about it and want it, and that if enough of us want it, then we will get it. And then now it's like, oh, it turns out that what we want has very little relevance to what we get. Like 80+% of us want campaign finance reform.
90% of us don't want gerrymandering.
There's like
90% of us are anti-gerrymandering.
Like a 30% line of whether is the odds of something happening, and it's a perfectly flat line. And on the x-axis, it's like support of the population. So if 0% or 100% of people support an idea, it's that flat 30% likelihood of it happening. It doesn't matter what we want.
Yeah, and so I've been now taking shots at reforming our electoral system and our political system so it's more responsive to what people want, so that as we immiserate millions of people, maybe there'll actually be political repercussions, as opposed to now everyone trundles along and is happy just to pelt each other with ideological rocks as opposed to solving the root problems. But I'd love the fact that we're still trying to make it happen in terms of awareness in the media via the Bootstraps documentary, the ITSA Foundation. Comingle is trying to have people band together and do it. So what is the latest on the Bootstraps documentary project? Because again, I've seen such awesome footage and I want everyone to see it.
Yeah, we had a few hard years during the pandemic where like money dried up in general. And also part of that is like we were going and pitching to networks and things like 2 years after they would have like snatched it up, where the landscape really changed to, if it's not celebrity or true crime, good luck getting the networks to put money into it, even if they like it. It's just everyone's pinching pennies, and like no one knows with all the mergers what's going to happen. So early 2023, we decided to retool and try to get the rest of the thing independently financed, because we'd only financed to the point where we had pitch materials and we were partway through post-production, everything in the can. And then we're like, nope, we got to go out and raise the money again. Similarly with Comingle, we've been sort of bootstrapping that all the way along.
So what is, you've been bootstrapping Comingle
and bootstrapping
Comingling Bootstraps. Huh?
Yeah, more or less. But basically we're like, we got to go find foundations and we got to do some crowdfunds and we got to keep struggling for a few more years. Early this year, late last year, we had that successful crowdfund for Comingle and started running off that momentum, as well as the ITSA Foundation partner.
Yeah, that was early last year.
Becoming a 501c3 legitimately. And so we started this year with a pretty big grant and a pretty big matching commitment.
Okay, wait, I'm just going to stop here for a second, because when people hear the word foundation, they think gobs of money. No, I know those two things may or may not actually sync up in this particular case.
Well, so it's kind of like we're bootstrapping ITSA Foundation too. The thinking is, okay,
I should just start Andrew Yang Foundation, just to be like, like solicit here. Yeah. Everyone, I will put $100 behind the foundation. Kidding. mean,
There's two ways to start. There's two reasons to start a foundation. One is to get rid of all this money you have, and another is to try to raise a lot of money.
That was clearly Scott's problem. It's like, oh, I'm too flush.
Yeah. What we want to do is have a foundation with people with gobs of money can look at and go, we can actually donate to here, and we know that it'll actually go to people as basic income. That's like the eventual, goal. Right now, we're starting off with the point is to make sure that what we consider to be key, ambitious UBI projects get funded. And the first two projects are Bootstraps and Comingle. And we want to do more funding of other UBI projects too. And I want people to see those projects and go like, oh, those are the types of projects.
All right. So this is what I'm digging into a little bit. Let's say someone wants to support these activities generally. Is the easiest way for them to do so to give to ITSA Foundation, and then you will turn to your good friend Conrad and say, hey, great news? Is that the easiest way?
Yeah, donating to ITSA Foundation.
And Conrad is nodding, for those of you just listening to this. So both of them agree that donating to ITSA Foundation, which can be found where?
At itsafoundation.org.
Yeah. itsafoundation.org. Pretty easy to remember. Income to support all. And I will say, too, this pains me deeply because I've been here, though not quite here. But imagine you give $500,000 to dozens of American families, and then you spend years and a couple $1 million documenting their stories. And again, I've seen this footage, and it's excellent. And now I'm sure you must be gnashing your teeth to get it out in the light of day in a way that is... obviously narratively structured correctly, it would be like a compelling series or movie.
Yeah. And we saw it go down, and it was like, I'd say to people, this is the coolest thing I'll ever do in my life. And they're like, oh, don't say that. And I was like, I'm not insulting myself.
It is lovely. I mean, he's not insulting his own life because it's really
the
very,
coolest
very
thing
moving.
I can imagine doing in my own life.
It's pretty awesome.
But yeah, that's sort of the situation. It's been painful to really want to share what we have, and we know what we have, but it takes a certain amount to do it right, to do it. Part of the point is like...
So how much are we talking about to quote unquote do it right?
So if we raise the next $500,000 that gets matched, that's enough to sort of...
So wait, you have a matching donor for $500,000?
$500,000.
Wow, they've already done the hard part. So they raise another $500,000, and then you have $1 million, then you could finish this bad boy, and then we could see it on our local TV
in 2025. And the plan is to do an impact campaign around the country. And everything we're doing is nonpartisan, the documentary itself is not about advocacy. It's about kicking the tires and seeing how it works and being honest about what's going down with people getting money. So, when you finish a documentary, that's a cause documentary. It's not like another sort of a series where it's like, you get it picked up, you're done, woo, celebrate. It's like, that's halfway done. Now you have to use it for whatever sort of impact you want to do. And in our case, it's not necessarily pushing politically. It's just really spreading the idea wide in an approachable way.
If someone wants to see a clip so they can get excited the way I'm excited because I've seen it, is there a clip available out there?
Yeah, you can go to itsafoundation.org and go to the projects page, and you can see like a little 1-minute kind of teaser.
Okay, and so if you go to itsafoundation.org, you can go look at the teaser, and then if you give to ITSA Foundation, it can go towards this $500,000 match.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, it'll immediately get matched. Now the teaser is very teasery. Like for spoilery reasons, we can't really show the footage until it's out much. We've been showing the footage in private screenings, like the one we did with you a little while back. Where
that's where I saw it. So again, I can vouch for the beauty of the treatment.
Yeah, we've done some initial private screenings. The first one was in LA, second one was in DC, third one was in New York, and then our next one is next month in a couple weeks in San Francisco.
Wow. So if someone wants to get plugged into the project generally, would it be through itsafoundation.org or would it be through like a Bootstraps website?
I think ITSA is the best way. If you want newsletters and stuff, you can do itsafoundation.org. You can do bootstrapstv.com, and you can do comingle.us, and they all have just places to say, I want to get updates.
Hey, y'all. If you know me, you know I'm not that handy in the kitchen, and I have become a huge believer and booster of Factor. Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals make eating a joy. It's so fast. You just pop that thing 2 minutes later, and you are eating a restaurant-quality, healthy meal, making you feel excellent about yourself. My favorite is the turkey chili with zucchini, and there is so much more to choose from. You never get tired of it. It fits any budget. It's fast, healthy. It is going to be the new Factor in your life. Yes, I'm a fan. Head to factormeals.com/yang50 and use code yang50 to get 50% off your first box and 2 free wellness shots per box while subscription is active. That's code yang50 at factormeals.com/yang50 to get 50% off your first box. Get Factor today. It's going to change the way you eat. Is it now going to be a series as opposed to a movie?
Definitely a series. So we started with like 11 stories, and you can only...
That's too much for a movie, yeah.
You can only fit like 3 stories into... And the
movie, yeah,
original
totally.
idea was a feature film. We'll take the 3 best. And then very quickly we're like, oh no, too much is happening. These stories are all too important. This is a series, you know?
Yeah, no, you could never do 11. As some recent filmmakers have found out who've tried to cram too many characters into into a movie. Well, guys, I'm really proud of you and congrats. I mean, what you're doing is so fundamental to improving the human condition. You know, it's funny when you talk about how Dea started from climate and then went to UBI. There are a lot of people who started from climate and then have wound up in democracy reform where I am. I went from UBI to democracy reform. It's like people be like,
interactions,
this democracy reform nut is what we have to crack. And by the way, even also, I think people know this about me. So that is the fundamental set of problems to solve, but that shouldn't stop you from lobbying from within the current political system for something like an enhanced child tax credit, from trying to energize people around anti-poverty, to getting money into people's hands. However, I mean, we can't wait for the political system to figure its stuff out. We should be taking cracks at solutions in all of these dimensions.
Yeah. And even if it were, we had a fully functioning system, you know, like every state had nonpartisan primaries and ranked choice voting, you know, we had like democracy dollars in every state, like would be great. No more gerrymandering with proportional representation. Like even all that, it's not like UBI is just going to like happen. You know, like there still has to be this movement, this
interest. You know what I think would
it.
happen? The enhanced child tax credit would happen. I mean, that's something where people look at it and be like, well, this is clearly the best thing we've ever done. And why aren't we doing more of it? I mean, we have child poverty in the United States of America. You can look this up. We have child poverty from 11% to 5.5% in 2021. And then in our infinite wisdom, let it shoot back up to 11% again in 2022 because our government couldn't get its act together. And when we halved it, there was a thought, it's like, well, clearly we can't undo this. It was one of those awesome legislative tricks where they didn't want to be accountable for the money in perpetuity. So they're like, we're just going to fund it through this period. And then clearly we'll redo it because no one's going to want to take this away. And then what our leaders have figured out is that we don't, like, nothing matters in the sense that they can shove millions of families back into poverty. No protests, no outcry, no rancor, no political pressure. It's like, and we've disappeared you. There's a much smaller example of this that's happened this year. It was called the Affordable Connectivity Program, where they subsidized broadband and wireless for a really significant number, maybe like 9 or 10 million Americans. And then the funding just dried up, and so they've just shoved. It's like they've shoved millions of Americans out of having wireless that was easier to afford, And again, it's like, well, like, what are you going to do? Can't really make your voice heard in the system, except especially if you're poor. And then, by the way, now we just took your broadband away. So, it's a very, very dark stuff happening out
it's
there.
so frustrating about the child tax credit too, because I mean, if you look at the history of the child tax credit, like, that this was, basically started as a Republican program, and it was doubled multiple times under Republicans, and then suddenly this happens. We get it going during the pandemic for 6 months in 2021, and then it's like when it comes to extending it, it was a fully partisan vote with every single Republican voting no, and then it was Manchin was the vote that on the Democratic side that stopped it. So it's like, how did we get that far where we have this system where there's not like these moderate voices saying, yeah, that makes sense, and of course we know why there's no moderate voices.
The partial revival that cleared the House earlier this year, I will say, was vastly bipartisan. Because I'm very confident that there are tons of moderate Republicans who are totally down with the child tax credit if it's packaged in a way but you're not wrong, Scott. Obviously, I mean, there's just way too much partisan conformity and locksteppery, and that they're willing to sacrifice good policies. So when you talk about the fact that UBI will not just pass itself even in a functional political system, totally agree. And that in a functional political system, I think we can get things achieved, but it's still going to require the efforts that you guys are leading and other people in the community.
I feel like my path to UBI was a little like your path to democracy reform, like start with a passion and then hit a barrier. And I think we both agree that it's incumbent on everyone to do what they can and what they feel they can and where they have the most leverage. And you have pull in politics that I don't have any. I think of the way that you.
I wish I had more, brother, but continue.
Yeah, like relative to me. So my story that I tell sometimes is like I came to New York to try to be an actor, start a new career, whatever. And in this economy as it exists, it's like almost impossible to be an actor or pursue an art or build a career. So I decided I'd better try to fix the economy and then go be an actor. Where it's like you decided to push this great idea of UBI, and you ran into the political realities of like in this political landscape, it's impossible to do something like this. Well, I guess I better go fix politics. And so now I'm glad we're in these two different spaces where it's like you have leverage in the political sphere to try to pass democracy reform, and we have at least momentum in the private sector sphere to actually start building an infrastructure on like internet technology that can keep pushing UBI forward. And
This podcast is sponsored by ExpressVPN. How did you choose which internet service provider to use? The sad thing is, most of us didn't have much of a choice because ISPs operate a lot like monopolies in the regions that they serve. They then use this monopoly position to take advantage of customers, and yes, they even sell your data, your activities to advertisers and big tech companies, and you don't see a dime. That's why I protect my internet surfing and devices with ExpressVPN. When you use ExpressVPN, it's like a magic portal to a perfectly safe and anonymous internet. And don't take my word for it. This is the #1 VPN service according to CNET. It's used by major companies all over the world. So stop handing over your personal data to ISPs and other tech companies who then mine your activity and sell off your information. Protect yourself with a VPN I trust to keep my privacy online. Visit expressvpn.com/yang. That's expressvpn.com/yang to get 3 extra months free. Go to expressvpn.com/yang right now to learn more. I thought that was one of the best arguments for UBI, is that we need an arts and creativity economy that's just getting eviscerated progressively, and AI is going to do a number on it even more. So first, let me say, I think you were wise to say like, hey, I need to fix the economy so that people can be artists and creatives, because we're here in New York City right now, which is obviously one of the epicenters for artists and creatives, and they're having a tough time. It's like you talk about, one of the examples is Mad Men, and the intent's like, oh, some clever guy comes up with an ad slogan. Now that stuff's all algorithms. It's like, hey, we're gonna just like A/B test like 100 things, and there's no creative. And the ad agencies here are getting gutted. It's like they used to be filled with really creative people, maybe with colored hair and like, cool ideas. Now you get in there, like a lot of that stuff is gone. I mean, this is where people would come to be a creative professionally. And of course, some of that still exists, but I mean, shoot, it's getting
talk about
harder.
A dystopian kind of reality that we found ourselves in, where, we were talking years ago about like white collar workers being automated. And we were thinking that, when it comes to creative work, like that's the stuff that AI won't necessarily do, is the really creative stuff. And all of a sudden, like, it turns out the first thing is music and imagery and text and writing and like all these things. Like how I've seen some great comments, from artists saying that, like the original promise of like automation was like to automate like the grunt works, that you could do like the fun stuff.
Yeah, it's the reverse.
And now it's the reverse.
It's automating the fun stuff. It's like, why won't AI wash my dishes? We'll all just be left, to clean each other's rooms while AI is making all the art for us.
Yeah.
I mean, I again should not laugh, but this is one of the arguments for UBI, in my opinion, is to have a vibrant human arts and creativity economy and landscape, which is what we should want. And that there's, by the way, just total aside, but I was in LA, and then what they're saying in LA right now? Survive till 25.
Oh yeah.
Because they're just like, no one's making anything right now. I'm with people very high up in that industry where they're chilling at home. They're like, yeah, I'm getting to know my family better, because like, and these are creatives and actors and like various people that there just aren't projects.
I think we were a little ahead of the curve on that too, after spending that year trying to pitch and deciding to go back to independent financing. Like this last year, coming out of the festivals and things, like all the buzz was about like, participant media shut down and all these like you can't get anything funded.
I have a friend who worked at one of the aligned orgs, participant.
And we decided about like a year before, they were having like panels at festivals about like, okay, how do we bring philanthropy and foundations back into funding these things, because it's not happening through the big streamers. And like, so survive till 25 for us looks a little bit like, when 25 rolls around, be one of the few people who were able to actually pull off some content and have it ready to deliver.
Well, You've got the content, man. You've already done the hard part. You have the humanity, you have the stories, you already invested $2.5 million approximately ish. You got another $500,000 in a matching donor, and hopefully some people watching and listening to this will want to lend a hand.
I think the thing I'm most excited about, like the vision for me, is the grassroots side of like both getting the educational series out there and building like just a community of people on Comingle. Is that the whole point of it is just like with UBI, where it's you unleash people with economic security. So what happens if we get 1,000, 10,000, 1 million people on the platform that are a little bit more economically secure? What can they do together? What can they show up more for in their life? And
maybe they just show up for each other. You know what I mean? Show up for their families. I mean, that would be a win.
It sounds small too, with like $50 a week, it's $200 a month. But then if you got a couple of adults in the household, it's $400 a month. And we know from the pilots that you still see this like unleashing this.
There's something
this
wild
lack
about
of stress.
money, guys. It's true. Like, and it's one of the things I'm trying to harness to good. I'll give you a random example. I mean, people probably know this who follow this. Like, I take whatever money X gives me, and I just like turn around and give it to someone on X, and the amounts of money are typically very small. But then whoever gets it is like, yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It also makes me feel better about using that app, because then I'm like, oh, snap. I mean, I use it, at least I'll get some free money I can give to someone. But but it's true in our own behaviors. Like if you get an unexpected rebate or discount on something, all of a sudden, like you're like, yeah, you know, it's strange how programmed we all are to respond to increases or decreases in money.
And it's not only it's not only that too, as far as
really.
like how like helpful it can be, but also like that's the thing with basic income that a lot of people don't get, is that even if it sounds small, it's not really it's not so much the like boost that you get. It's that you always
It's
know
almost the belief,
the next month,
the
next
security,
month. Yeah.
the optimism, the trust.
Yeah, I mean, the built-in assumption of Comingle is that there are people out there that will actually support being a net donor, like on a weekly basis or monthly basis. And I think, we both think that they're out there. I mean, I'm one of those people. I know that, you know, I'm a minority anyways, as far as like being as interested in basic income as I am. But I do think that there's people out there that would be like, hey,
I'm just thinking of the people
that
that try to dunk on UBI, like on Twitter or whatever. It's like, who's going to pay the taxes for that? You? I'm like, yes, yes.
Well, and this is something I will say. I know people who pay a lot in taxes, who aren't too pumped about it, but would be much more accepting of it if they could see it going to various humans.
Yeah, especially in their own communities. Like it's in their neighborhoods.
Like if you see it working on that level, and I actually can feel for that perspective, because like, you know, the trust in the government to take those resources and allocate them efficiently to my neighbor, to my community member, and not just like to, frankly, like some weird bureaucracy or government pipes. It's like, okay, I understand the concern. You know, it's like that, and so if you can mitigate that concern, I think people would be much more glad to put money towards the community in that way.
So hopefully by the time you fix our democratic systems, we will have built a large enough model to be replicated and say, let's just do what Comingle is doing.
So where do they go, Scott, to see the trailer and make a donation?
It's a foundation.org.
It's a foundation.org. Click on the trailer, make a donation. Tax deductible, it sounds like?
It is.
Fan-freaking-tastic. Guys, thank you for keeping the UBI movement growing, trying to alleviate poverty in real time. It is a frustration of mine, you know, and I mean, I do what I can. But political reform, even I know, is going to take a minute. You know, and then there's the lobbying piece, the Humanity Forward organization grinding away, and that, I will say, I think can bear fruit in a reasonable time frame. I mean, they got this bill out of the House, if it comes out of the Senate, you know, so at least if I had to measure that, it's in months. But we should not be waiting for either of these things to try and get done everything we can. And the fact that Scott, I mean, holy cow, this guy, imagine a guy who's like, hey, we should be making a case for UBI. Let me crowdsource a UBI for myself, which is like the dream, by the way. I mean, and then he's like, hey, there should be an awesome UBI Foundation. Why don't I just kick that up? What do I call it? It's a foundation. You know, it's like, talk about a guy who's just trying to solve our problems by solving his own problems.
Well, as you said during your campaign, we are the cavalry. You know, like if you want something done, for the most part, you got to do it yourself. And it's only after you start doing it and showing it that it's possible, just like too with the series, like you can't get people to like want to fund something that is like, it was kind of this just vision. But then like if it's basically done, then they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, you know, people crave leadership, character, a vision of what's possible, and then you have to go grind out the work. And Conrad, for you and Dea, I know this has been a labor of love for years, and I can't wait for these stories to see the light of day, because they are awesome and moving. And a credit to you guys for going through what you've gone through this last number of years, because it's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, thank you. No, it wasn't easy.